Hello and welcome to this episode of Love Procurement. My name is Stephen Carter and I'm going to be a little host today for this conversation. And I'm delighted to be joined by Adam Lalani, the Chief Technology Officer at Alliad. And I'm going to really sort of start the conversation flowing, Adam, and just sort of ask you a couple of questions about, I'm fascinated because you're a Chief Technology Officer and you're talking on a Love Procurement podcast, which tends to be a little bit counterintuitive. So what's your background and why do you love procurement? That's probably a starting point.
Okay, so very good question. So I've been working in the technology arena now for just shy of 30 years. So my first big break was when I was 17 years old. I was lucky enough to get a one-day temp job for £4 an hour at the head office of Dewhurst, which was a very large retail chain of butchers in the UK that I'm sure you know very well. So that was on a Friday, and then they said, "Okay, we like your work. Come back on Monday, and we'll see what we can do with you." So I was actually counting shopping vouchers. Like that was my temporary job with them, and then within 3 or 4 months, I became the IT manager of the organization, just around the time that I turned 18 years old. So then since then it's been a long and winding journey that's taken me through lots of different industries, lots of different geographies. So I've worked in a number of different areas. So retail, as I've mentioned, commodities trading, shipping, air freight, air passenger handling, local government in the UK, logistics, supply chain, road transport, fuel distribution, lots and lots of different things. So it's a very, very diverse background. And I joined Aliad just shy of 3 years ago and became the CTO at the start of this year. That's where I've had like a lot more focus on procurement in this role than perhaps in other roles that I've had before.
So that's quite a journey, or you could say almost a slippery journey from Dewhurst to Butchers. But that's quite fascinating. So obviously, going from the promotion from being doing the vouchers to being chief, or the technology officer for the butchers chain is quite a interesting jump. I mean, and obviously right now we're talking to each other. We're both in the UAE, although in different cities. That's quite an interesting journey to get to that point. And one of the things that struck me when you were saying that was around, when you talk about the procurement, the process, different jobs, you must have seen a lot of change over that time, but also there must be a few things that really you've become part of your sort of mantra for doing business. I mean, so when you look at that journey, are there sort of things that you've sort of really learned that you carry on forward with you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, first of all, I had a Danish colleague several years ago that once said to me when we were having dinner as a team that any person who's in the C-suite, like the C actually, instead of chief, it should stand for change. So whether you're a CEO, CTO, CFO, etc., that actually your responsibility at that level should be to be a catalyst for change. And this was just something that at the time really resonated with me. And, as I've grown and obviously learned more over the years, he really, really was right with what he said. But going back to what you were asking, which is, the sort of common threads that I've sort of seen over the years whilst working, is that ultimately, when it comes to technology, when it comes to any kind of support function or even an operational business unit, it always boils down to three things, the three Ps. So it boils down to people, it boils down to your processes, and it boils down to your product or the technology that you use to underpin what you're trying to achieve. So this is something that, again, I heard many, many years ago when I was doing one of my ITIL courses, and this must have been maybe 20 years ago now. But what held true then still holds true today. It always boils down to those three things: people, process, and product. For any kind of successful business to be undertaken.
Okay, and that's a really good intro. I mean, obviously that sort of goes back to what we always just think about when we're doing process for engineering, or even like to describe it as these days. I mean, the whole that the mantra of looking at what people do, what the processes, and then selecting the technology is a key part of it. And obviously, bringing this back round to procurement and Evaluator and procurement software. How did you overlay that within when you're looking at the procurement choices around in the market and the products?
Well, when I joined Aliad, as I mentioned a bit earlier, just shy of 3 years ago, I went and met with senior leaders across all of our business units, all of our support functions. And one of the things that really stood out for me was where we had major struggles was in the procurement area. So one of our business units involves really very, very high volume procurement activities, and also involves a lot of supplier interactions. And all of this was, quite simply put, almost fully manual. So the procurement director that we have here in our organization talked about like our purchase order system as a PO typing system, where you would type in everything manually, and okay, you end up with a wonderful purchase order that looks great, that's generated and sent to your supplier. But the work to produce that purchase order was fundamentally manual. So we actually had started off wanting to just digitize the supplier journey. So onboarding suppliers, compliance checks, things of that nature. And we spent quite a bit of time process mapping what the as-is processes were, and then seeing what we might be able to do to digitize that and speed things up. So, I mean, I'm pleased to say now that we've successfully had Evaluator embedded in the business for a while, is that where we have an example of where it would previously take 2 weeks to onboard a supplier, we were now able to do it in 20 minutes. And that's not fabricated, that is real fact. And I've seen the examples this time last week. And that was where we wanted to digitize and start from. So when we looked at this as a working group, so myself, the procurement director, and one of our senior finance directors, what we realized is that there was an opportunity to do far, far more than what we had originally envisaged. So we put together, you could say, a wish list that we then watered down into what would be a minimum viable product for us, what the absolute must-haves are. And then we, of course, then with those requirements, went to the market and looked at what are the best in breed products that are out there. And then once we sort of whittled that down to, because it was quite a long list of 9 or 10 potential products, and we got that down to 3 or 4, where we then went and deep dived and looked in much more detail what the art of the possible was. And one of the things that really stood out for us, because of this high volume supply chain business that we operate in Africa, and how procurement is so vital to that, is that the way that we needed to manage our product catalogs was really best suited to iValuer. So iValuer was a great fit in terms of how we needed to manage those catalogs. And I mean, I'm not going to go into all of that detail on this call, in this discussion, but it was far and wide like the best offering that was out there. And then that's what stood out for us at that time when we were reviewing and then making a decision. So this was not for us strictly a cost-driven decision. This was, if you go back to these 3 Ps again, it was about, first of all, like, can we re-engineer our processes, do something better, but keep the fundamentals that we need? Can our people embrace this? And is iValuer the right product to fit with the other 2 Ps? So this is where we got to, and how we took then that strategic decision that iValuer is the product that met all of our requirements, not just to say not only for today, but also for the future. Something that's extremely important to me and to us in this organization is that we will only take line of business applications that allow us to scale. So if tomorrow, we want to enter a new market and be able to conduct our business there, obviously procurement plays a big part in that, and having a tool like iValuer allows us that scalability. So that was like another key differentiator for us with iValuer, that scalability is extremely effective, and it's been proven since we've implemented it as well.
That's really great to hear, because obviously it's lovely to hear that story. But one of the things I want to take you back to is that concept of MVP, because I hear a lot of people talk about MVPs quite a lot, but I don't think that many people actually understand what MVP is. Especially when I hear about people saying we have a go live and that sort of stops, and we have a product. I mean, for me, MVP is all about, as you said, minimum viable. So you then move it forward. So and you take that product on a continuous improvement journey rather than as you mentioned, for the future. It's not just for Christmas; it's for the rest of your life type thing. So within that, you mentioned at the end then around how you're continuously growing that. Do you have the product you have today? The product, the process, whatever you have today, is that the same as you envisaged before you went into the product process, or has it sort of evolved a little bit with your business and success? And that'd be really good to understand where you've taken the product beyond where you thought you were going to be, if that makes sense.
So I think for the most part, if we had to put a percentage term on it, I would say 90% of what I imagined at the start, once we had framed what that MVP looks like, is what we have. So I think that that's a testament to iValuer and the product itself, that it is very flexible if you're clear on what you need to achieve. So it, other than perhaps like the UI, I had imagined it differently and things like that, but in my mind's eye when we talked about this stuff at the start. But in terms of the functionality and the way that we use the product, the way that our employees interact with it, our suppliers, it's 90% of what I had pictured at that time. Now the differences are differences that have arisen when we've realized that some other things from that wish list that was chopped off the MVP So, I mean, one of the things that we use very frequently here is that Moscow methodology.
Yeah.
So the should and could haves, we've ended up being in a position to actually implement them, and that's what that 10% difference would look like if we compared the original blueprint versus today. So we've ended up being able to do more, of course, not straight away, but as we've evolved and understood more about the capability of the product, but also the capability of our own people and their ability to also contribute to new ways of working, and therefore the process again. So that's what I would say looking back. Yeah. And there's not many implementations that I could say that 90% of what we've ended up with today is what we had imagined at the beginning. There's very few, actually, if I think across the 30 or so years.
So that's really interesting, because obviously as we look forward into the future, when we talk about MVPs and we talk about evolving technology, and obviously we have the big elephant in the room, which is AI coming out and coming along. And I know you've been really keen to look at how you bring in AI technology into the business, but also into the procurement function. And one of the things that strikes me is actually that those 3 Ps, people, process, and product, apply so well to adopting AI technology. I mean, what are your thoughts around how you're going to bring AI into your team?
So AI is something that's extremely important for us here at Aliad, and it's something that we, as a working group at the most senior level of the organization, have really thrown all of our weight behind, and we're committed to making the absolute best value out of what is available to us. Not only to of course, drive better outcomes, but also to, again, allow us to scale. And this word scale, or scalability, is extremely important, to a CTO or CIO, because unlike perhaps 15, 20 years ago, where you would just whack a system in and do some patching for it every couple of months, and you'd keep it alive for 5 years and then maybe upgrade or ditch it and get something else. We have to be deeply involved in what our business is doing from a technology perspective. So when we talk about AI and how we want to use it, one of the key areas for us is procurement.
Right.
It's extremely important for us that the way that the AI works in the procurement arena is that it is embedded directly within the application that we use. So no taking data out, doing something outside of the core system, and then bringing it back in. It should be there natively within the system that we use. So iValuer is one of the pioneers in that respect, is that AI is not a bolt-on, it's not an afterthought, it's there natively embedded in the newest versions of iValuer. And it's something that really blew my mind a few months ago when I saw some of the things that iValuer customers are doing with the AI capability that's there. So we're very close in our case to being ready to go live with the latest version of iValuer, which is currently 1.8.2, and that will unlock all of that native AI capability for us. So what this is going to do is take a procurement department here at the corporate office where I sit, where there's a cumulative experience of more than 200 years of procurement industry experience, and take those colleagues away from the more transactional aspects of procurement. So things like data entry. I mean, we talked about the PO typing system a few minutes ago, what we used to have, and that has dramatically improved, but it's going to improve even more for us with the way that we plan to use the AI capability in iValua. So what that means then is that 200 years of experience in procurement can be used on more strategic outcomes rather than the transactional outcomes. So in a conversation that, in fact, you and I had previously, Stephen, I mean, the ideal low-hanging fruit for AI outcomes in iValua is to take these low-value activities, but that have a high time overhead, and work out how these can then be at least partially, if not fully, automated in order to then allow those experienced people to actually use that experience to do something much more important for us as an organization. So that's when we talk about procurement. Now, if you expand out to the organization in general, where again, then you're going to have thousands, tens of thousands of years of cumulative experience. When you start thinking then what we're able to do if we can free up these fine minds that we have everywhere in the company to work on more strategic outcomes, then that's where we're going to see real game-changing activity, and that's our aim, and that's what we are doing, and we have very ambitious, aggressive targets in that respect.
So I mean that's really quite quite impressive aim, because one of the things I hear all the time when I talk about AI, and I'm glad to hear that you've got 200 years, which is a little bit older than me, which is quite good news. But from a product perspective and from a technology, I get told all the time it's going to take people's jobs away. It's going to I look at this totally differently. I look at this as being a leveler, in terms of it's going to level the paths of people. I mean, we're going back to your sort of first comments about working in the butchers. I'm looking at this and thinking, well, actually, at that time there were people using typewriters, and then word processors came out, and everybody said word processors are going to make half the workforce redundant because people couldn't do it themselves. Instead, those people got reallocated to more value-added jobs, and now some of those people that were in the typing pool are now senior executives in companies. So, to me, it's a great leveler. AI should take us to the next level of evolution around employment, etc. What do you feel that if you had a little magic wand and about your workforce and then the skills you need, have you got any thoughts around where this is going to take the employment, the workers, should we say, in the businesses?
So, I mean, I agree with what you said, and I think the example also that you've used about the typing pool is also an excellent one. I think that it will just mean that different jobs will exist to what exists today. So, for example, when I started out, there was no such job role as a CIO or a CTO, or perhaps maybe a IT director or something did exist in some larger companies, but the role didn't exist 30 years ago. But here I am sitting talking to you, and it does exist, and I'm living it. So similarly, the same concept will apply here. And I think that another sort of link to make here, or comparison with previous giant strides in the technology way of thinking about things, is when the internet became a lot more prevalent. So you and me could start a business together in our garage, or in the spare bedroom or something in someone's house, and put up a website that looks just as good, just as creative as a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And when you visit, if a potential customer visits the website, they won't know that it's just a couple of guys with a dream versus an absolute behemoth of an organization. So I see this again, that this is going to happen with the AI, and I'm sure that you would agree, but perhaps you might see it slightly differently. But I think that it will mean that then again we're going to have this wave of new kind of business opportunities and new business ideas that will come because it's suddenly possible for a small company or if a group of friends to start something up and really create something incredible, and perhaps be the next Amazon, or the next Facebook or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think it's another inflection point for the industry, for people, for jobs, and I don't think people should be scared of it, because we've had those for the millennium. All my working life, there's always been these inflection points. So, and there's always been that big thing that's going to take everybody's jobs away, and it never happens. So I think it's great. I mean, one of the things that, before I sort of need to probably finish the conversation, and it's been fantastic talking to you. One of the things that I'd like to sort of get from you, that's what that is the, from a CTO perspective. I mean, you mentioned new job roles, etc. Do you think companies should have chief AI officers, for example?
Yes, I think they should, and iValua is one of those companies that's already done that. And I mean, this was a big takeaway for me when I was at the recent iValua event a few months ago in Paris, that your CEO stepped down to become the chief AI officer for the company so that he could absolutely provide all of his focus on that. And that's how seriously you guys are taking AI. And that's, you could say that I guess I'm the chief AI officer here, but that's how seriously we take it at our end as well. And obviously, different companies, different structures, etc. But we have someone to spearhead what we're doing in AI, and that happens to be me. But there's the whole business is traveling in that direction, and that's exactly the same with iValua. And I think that just shows the commitment that you guys have to what's coming next. This is just the beginning. It's nowhere near. We're just getting started.
Absolutely, I think I agree, and we are at the starting point of this. And I think we could talk forever on this, and I certainly have lots of opinions. And one of those is that that I will share, which is basically AI to me is a new user experience, and that to me is, when I thought about that was the most compelling thing I could ever think about, was actually finally any person can interact with any system. To me, that is an amazing step forward when it's unlocked. So Adam, I think that's a fantastic conversation, and I think it's time I wrapped up. But from anybody listening to this, please share and love this podcast, and thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. Adam, would you like to throw in any last sort of snippets before we sort of finally wrap up?
I think it just goes back to what we spoke about, is that ultimately any successful implementation of a technology platform revolves around those 3 Ps, and it will, in 100 years from now, I'm certain that the same principles will hold true. So I think it's like, always go back to that: plan well, and embrace the future. These are my final thoughts.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So you can start from working in a butcher shop all the way to becoming a CTO in a global organization. Just think what you could do with AI. That'd be amazing. So thank you very much, Adam. Thank you for joining me. And if you want to connect with us, we're on LinkedIn. We have the iValua website, obviously, and we'll share our profiles with you online. But thank you all for joining us, and thank you very much, Adam, for sharing your insights into the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.